It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele and this is the Breakfast Club. Today in program, we bring you yet another interesting episode where we talk to former ZPRA comrades or cadres or liberators. We want to understand more about their role in the liberation struggle because like we've always argued that the history of ZPRA has not been documented. There are so many stories that we don't know, and aside we have taken it upon ourselves to actually go back into history, find out who did what, when, and why, and we want to understand more the role of the ZPRA in the liberation struggle. And today in the program we'll be talking to retired Lieutenant Colonel Bonus Hlabangana, whose war name was David Machida. And we will talk a lot about his title and how eventually he left the army. But that's the main interesting story that we'll be talking about. During the war, he was a company commander, company commander in the ZPRA. So we want to find the interesting journey that he took before independence and after independence.
My name is Bonus Hlabangana. I come from Philippus. Area called Goldrai, under Chief Matuna. Before I went to the struggle, I was already a teacher, a well-trained teacher for a primary education. So I did the teacher training for 3 years. It was called T3. And then I also taught for 3 years. And a school that was under a plum employees, called employees. That's where I taught for 3 years. And then at the end of 1976, I decided to go and join the struggle. So it's not that we were taken out by anybody, but we decided on ourselves. We were both teachers. So we decided to pretend to be going to Botswana for a Christmas, you know. It was just before Christmas. And then we actually boarded a train from Blawayo, and then we went to Botswana. And when we arrived at Botswana, we surrendered ourselves to the police there. And one of the policemen happened to be my relative. And he tried to encourage me not to go to the liberation struggle, but I refused. He wanted to give me a very good job, but I said no. I left Zimbabwe, I had a good job as well, and therefore I cannot come here to come and work. When I left my job, I wanted my country to be freed, and that's the reason why I actually refused. So they then took us to, what do you call them, where refugee camps, at Francistown, That's where they sent us. Initially, even when we arrived there, the people that were in charge of the refugee camp, they thought maybe we were sent by the regime or something, because very few people that were teachers or were workers would go there. Mainly it was people that were not working at that time. So they thought maybe we had been sent by the regime, but we made it clear that we're just ordinary teachers. Fortunately, some of our people, some of our kids that we taught actually came there. So they actually did tell them, I know these were teachers, we know them. So that's how we cleared. So that suspicion, that's how it was cleared. And then we had to, from Francistown, we had to board planes from Botswana to Zambia. And then from Zambia, when we arrived there, we were taken to Nampundu camp.
This is Angola?
No?
Okay.
It's Zambia.
Zambia, okay.
It was sort of a refugee camp, but there was a lot of exercise drills and all those things that were done at Nampundu. That's where we learned a lot of things. Physically, we had to run around. But initially it was difficult because also there were problems of hunger and all those things and thinking of home and so on. But the exercises were hard. Every morning we would wake up, go and do exercises, and then come later on and come and eat and so on. We stayed there for some time washing, we're not even washing during those days. We could stay for some days without washing, doing exercises, hard exercises. But we're not used to that, but eventually we got used to it. Actually, it helped us even when we went out for a training. And then from there, we're taken to another camp called FC. From FC, we stayed for a short time, and then we were taken to Angola by trucks. It was a long journey. It was a long journey through Zambia and through Angola. Even when we got into Angola, it took us some days, if not a week or more. Yeah, if not a week or more. And as we were traveling, we could see the destruction that was done by the, what do you call them? The
UNITA.
UNITA, yeah. UNITA. It was a UNITA. We could see destruction that was done by UNITA, and that scared us a bit. But since we had not been trained, but the people that were driving and the Cupians that were with us, they made us look, no, there's no problem, we should not worry. So we traveled until we went to the camp where we were trained, called Mboma. It was called Mboma camp in Angola. Right there we found the Cubans and a few Soviet from Soviet Union. I think the Soviet Union was actually the head, but most of the people that were there were Cubans. So those were our instructors. So we were divided, well, we were quite many, we were divided into companies. And we had 12 companies. And each company, we were looking at about 100 people in a company. So 12 companies, you can see how many we were. And then from 1 up to 8, 1 up to 7, it was infantry. Then the other ones were special units like the motor unity, the anti-tank unity, anti-air unity, engineering unit, all those groups. So we were trained by Cubans. It was a hard training.
So which company did you specialize? Infantry or
I was in infantry. Okay. Yes, I was actually during training, I was the company commander of one of the companies. It was company 3.
So you finished training after how many months?
The training was just 6 months for the whole group. But I had to continue another 6 months doing a command training. We were chosen, just a few, I think it was just about 30 or so, that were chosen to specialize more on commanding. So I was one of those that were left there, and we took another 6 months training. And then so when we finished, we were already finishing with the second group, because the first group finished after 6 months and they went back to Zambia. And then another group came in and continued and were trained for 6 months. So but we were training on our own as commanders. So it actually took us 1 year training. So it was, good and hard training.
After training in Angola, where do you go?
Yes, after training in Angola, maybe before we get there, after leaving, before we left Angola, I just wanted to make it clear, when we're training in Angola, we're actually using live ammunition. That was a great advantage. It helped us even when we got to Zimbabwe, which was Rhodesia then, because they were actually using live ammunition. For instance, the anti-tank, the noise that thing makes when they were shooting targets using anti-tank, it was really terrible, but we got used to it, Even on AKs and so on, we're actually using live ammunition to hit targets, mortars and so on, and all those things. Even those that were doing engineering, they were exploding explosives, actually doing it practically and live. So all that noise, we got used to it, so it made us, confident. And then when we finished, we went back to Zambia. Went to then we went to FC, back to FC, and then were taken to the coaches. I can't remember, it was called F2 or what, the name of those. CG2, yeah. Yeah, that's where we were. Yes, and then we stayed for some time there, and then we went to Ifeira crossing point. That's where the zebras were crossing when they were going to Zimbabwe. And I went to a place called Chundu and Mvuti. That's the Urunga area. That's where we operated most of the time until independence.
So you operate that time until 1980. So when you are told that we are now having ceasefire, and so where do you go?
Actually, what happened when we actually told to have a ceasefire, I had crossed to Zambia to get more ammunition. So I was actually closed there. So I actually stayed in Zambia, and then we brought back and we went to an assembly point called the Papa. The Papa, you know where it is. Yeah, that's where we went, and that's where. Then from there, of course, when we were told that we should cease fire, we didn't think it was a good idea.
So yeah, let's talk about you are told to cease fire. What was your situation there in terms of how much ground did you control as ZPRA?
As ZPRA, we controlled a lot of ground, especially that area, Urungwe, Yonkeliana, up to Ikaroi town and so on. That place we were already controlling it. We were no longer moving in small groups like what the guerrillas used, because in our training, it was actually regular arm. We were not trained on guerrilla tactics, but it was actually regular. So we moved in large numbers, and even during the day, we no longer feared anything, because we had even anti-tanks and the anti-air weapons. So our training was quite different. That's why sometimes we had arguments with the guerrillas, because they just wanted to hit and run, and we didn't. Our tactics were different.
So you don't consider yourselves as guerrillas?
I'm half gorilla and half regular.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, the reason why I would say I'm a half gorilla and half regular arm, because initially when we came there and we didn't know the area and all those things, we actually were integrated into the groups of the guerrillas, and they were showing us how they were doing it and so on. But later on, we also started showing them our own tactics, not to run away, to attack the enemy even during the day. We're no longer running away, and they were moving in large groups with heavily armed, and we never feared the enemy like what they used to do. Actually, the whole area, Urungwe and Karoi, all those places were taken, those areas, and the regime was afraid even to come there. Even when we attacked, we were no longer running. We would attack and run over camps, soldiers' camps and so on. I remember at one time we ran over a camp here, that Mzorewa group, what do they call it? Yeah, we ran over the camp, and then nobody followed. They didn't even want to follow because of the arms that we were carrying, the arms that we had. We were heavily armed and well armed, and we could even see from our own locals thinking that Zimbabwe were going to get it very soon. Yeah, we are really confident we would run in Zimbabwe, would overrun the regime, and we're not afraid. So that gave us a lot of confidence. Actually, the training yet of using live ammunition helped us. With those small arms, trying to hit us with small arms, it really didn't mean much to us. We used to anti-tank mortars and so on, and we used that even when we were attacking up the camps of the regime. We're using those weapons, and we had great success.
So you are then told to go to assembly points. You go there. How is the morale amongst the
morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. The morale was very low. because to us, we're really sure that we're winning the war. We had no doubt that we're going to win the war. We really, this coming to assemble was really a bad thing to us. We didn't like it.
So
But sometimes you had to follow a command only, but we didn't like it, and we really even did say to our commanders, with love, you are now selling us. No, we're going to be killed.
So when you're moving to the assembly point, we know the other side left a few people in the front, keeping their areas. Lina, you just withdraw, everyone goes. Why?
Every time. That's what we're commanded to do, and we didn't like it. We're complaining to them. We didn't like that. We just told, but because ZPRA was were very obedient to our commanders. It was a well-trained army. So sometimes we just obeyed, even if you felt it was not the right decision. But you just had to obey. That's the main reason why we did that. But we didn't feel it was correct, because the other side, the Zanders and so on, they started occupying our places where we were, and then they started politicizing those people, telling them lies as if they ever fought anything. But in real fact, the people on the ground knew that it was ZPRA that fought. Yeah.
So now the results come. Tell us about that day.
I could not eat for some days. It was bad. It was really bad, because we never thought we would lose, because of what we had done and how far we've gone with our fighting and the regions that were taken over. We didn't think it was fair. But again, the commanders, especially on Nongo, they came and started addressing us from assembly points. They're telling us that we should not do anything. But we felt we should go on and fight, because in our case, the Cubans were prepared to help us, the Soviets were prepared to help us. We had all the weapons at our disposal, and we didn't see why there should be disagreement, and talking and so on, and that's why we lost it the way we lost. We knew by talking, the Americans and the British would give it to the other group, and that's exactly what they did. But if we had fought, ZPRA would have won. It was really a bad time. We didn't like it.
So now it's the time for integration. Where do you go?
Yeah, then integration came. The first battalion, we went to the actual integration was done at Llewellyn Barracks. That's where training of the battalions was done. So the first group was taken by one of our ZPRA commanders, Omar Dube. He's the one who became the first commander. And then the second group, I became the commander of the battalion.
With this one, which battalion was this?
Mine it was called 4-1, meaning if under 4 brigade.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 4-1. That's the battalion that then went to Conmar.
Okay.
So, but what we realized even in our training there, it was mainly the Zanders and the ZPRA. And the regime was only there on admin and so on. And they were very hostile to us, even in the admin and all those things. They were very hostile and disrespected us. Yeah. And from Llewellyn, then we went to Conmar. That's where our battalion was stationed. So I was the battalion commander there.
So you were the one in charge of Conmar?
I was the one in charge of Conmar, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was the battalion commander there, I was the one in charge. So I was reporting to, if our battalion was under 4 brigade, so I was reporting to 4 brigade commander. The 4 brigade commander was a white man, very hostile to us as well. Yeah, as I've said, mainly admin parts were done by a regime. So what they were doing, they wanted to make sure that our forces are not happy. They wanted us to fight eventually, something like that. So what they were doing, especially in terms of payment and so on, they would purposely omit names of other people so that they don't get paid. So the soldiers didn't like that, and they knew that. We would write properly all the names, their force numbers, everything, send it to army headquarters, and then they would purposely omit the names. And then they say, your people didn't bring the proper names, and that's brought it disgruntlement to the soldiers. They were not happy. And the two, a political scene, if you listen to the radio and the TV, it was as if only ZANDA fought the war. There was nothing talked about ZPRA. It's as if ZPRA never did anything. And that annoyed the soldiers as well, the ZPRA soldiers. Everything was being talked about in ZANDA, and even Onkala, the politicians from the ZANU side, they were talking ill of ZPRA and the ZAP. And that angered the soldiers a lot. I remember at one time, Nkala came here and talked at White City, talked a lot of rubbish, a lot of bad things about Izapu and the ZPRA. That really boiled and angered the soldiers. Even the songs, everything that was happening on TV, and it was all about ZANDA, and nothing, completely nothing about the ZPRA.
So there was a fight when there was in Tumbani, then there was a fight at Konmara. You were the battalion commander.
I was the battalion
So
commander.
what happened?
So what exactly happened there? As I have mentioned, these things were still boiling up. Soldiers were getting angry and angrier as time went on, and especially when they talked, even rallies, and talked bad about ISAP and ZPRA. Our arms were not allowed to hold any arms. So our arms were actually put into they were actually locked in a house. So even the commanders were not allowed to have arms. That's how they did not respect us. Commanders were not even allowed to hold a pistol or anything. They were all taken into the armory. All the weapons were locked there. And as I've said, even the other soldiers from the other side, they started singing those songs, Zenzele and so on. And our guys got really angry. And then they broke the armory.
So, but what, this is what I understand. These guys are singing songs about ZANDA. Why didn't you start maybe singing songs about ZPRA?
We could sing ours, but ours, we did sing our own songs as well, of course. But what was disappointing is that when it came to radio and TV, it was only ZANDA, as if ZPRA were not existing. We could sing on our own. But that, even when we went to home, maybe you were visiting your parents, they would only talk, why is it we're only seeing ZANDA and there's nothing from you guys? That means you didn't fight. Is that true? So you have to start explaining and so on. But that annoyed our forces. And so that's why they broke that armory.
So what were the numbers here in terms of ZPRA and ZANDA at Konmara, the battalion that you were commanding?
It was half-half. Everything was half-half. For instance, I was the battalion commander from ZPRA. The second in command was the ZANDA guy. So it happened even companies. It was the same thing. If the guy the guy from ZANDA was the company commander, his twice he would be a ZPRA. So that's how it went throughout.
So if it's a battalion, how many people are there?
About 1,000 or so.
So a battalion is about 10 companies?
Yes.
Okay.
It was about 10 companies. It was quite a large, with a lot of soldiers. And commanding almost 1,000 soldiers. It was not a joke. And they knew that, and then when they started not giving them pay and other things, even clothes and so on, not supplying properly, that caused a lot of discouragement among the soldiers.
So tell us about the day of the fight. Your guys, they just woke up and decided, no, we're going to break the armory and fight.
As I said, they were talking about it. These people are not treating us well. We have to show them that we are also people, we are soldiers. So what happened, they broke into the armory. That was in the evening. It was dark. So that they would not be detected. So when they broke out of the armory, they took the arms, they gave each other, the zebras, they gave themselves those weapons. And then they started attacking the other group. So because our Norway Conmara is just close to the road. So after that, they also went to the road and made a roadblock. It was difficult to command them, to tell them to stop and so on. It was really difficult because they were really angry. And they understood why they were so angry.
So where are you when this is happening?
I was also there, but then I had to go to Gweru to go and report the case to the commanders there. In Gweru, where there is this training. That's where some of the senior commanders were. So I had to report them, to tell them exactly what happened, and also report to A4 Brigade what happened. And then I also went back there. And then that's the time when also Onkomo, they flew up and started talking to the soldiers, Lavomasugu and so on. So that's how the whole thing subsided. But the soldiers were still not happy. They wanted the fight to continue so that they could be respected as well. Because they felt they were not being respected. It was as if they had not fought any war at all. So they wanted to fight and win it by use of arms. And so they copied what happened at Kutumban and also did it at Conmara. That was the main reason. They wanted to free themselves. They wanted to take over the country.
So the people died?
Yes, people died. They did die.
Especially so you lost soldiers from both sides?
From both sides. Although mainly it was the Zebra that had arms, most of them. It was mainly from the people that lost their lives. It was mainly from the other side.
Because they didn't have guns?
Yeah.
So now the fight has happened, people have died. What happens? Your bosses call you and ask you what is happening?
Yeah, they did. But I explained, actually they'd come, I think it was a week or so before, and I told them all these problems. With these speeches that are being made on TV and the radio that is disturbing our soldiers. And also the admin part and how the soldiers were not happy with the payment and all those things. So I had explained to the commanders when they came, Masugu and Nongo, I had explained everything. So when this happened, I also told them, I told you about these things, and nothing was done about it. So, and then that's the result. So I was called and I explained everything. And then after that, they took me to 4 Brigade to go and stay there. Yeah, stayed for a short time, and then they sent me to KG6 headquarters. Yeah, that's where I worked. But I knew.
So you were removed as the battalion commander?
Removed completely from the forces. Okay. Because they thought I had influenced the soldiers to do what they did. And yet I told them where the problems were coming from. So they thought I had influenced them. So they then took me to KG6 to go and work there. But I knew it was a setup. So I worked there and I admin, were doing mainly transfers of soldiers and so on. So while I was still working there, suddenly CIOs came, the Central Intelligence Organization people. They came and then they said they wanted to go and interview me. Okay, I tried to say, okay, let's go and where exactly are you going to interview me and so on. They said, don't worry about that. Don't take anything because we're going to bring you now. But I was never brought back again. That's how they took me.
So, so they take you, where do you go?
They sent me to a different police camps, at police camp, and they have got these houses where they keep criminals and so on. Say they would take me to one place and then move me to another place and come and interview me, then move me to another place.
So basically you had been arrested?
I'd been arrested, yes. Okay. They arrested me, and even the food that they were giving us, I remember whether it was Mbari, where I had to get food through a window, a small window, you know, eating from outside. Or if there was a bone, you could not take it out. So yeah, it was actually, they were actually torturing me for a long time, for almost a month or so, I think, before they sent me to Chikrupi.
So what were the questions you were being asked and what were you charged of?
Mainly it was, once you have been making meetings and planning to overthrow the government. It was mainly that. And then I would ask you to which meetings, who was there? Can you bring somebody who can say, I was with him to these meetings? And there was nothing. They did torture me, beat me, because they wanted me to release information, especially about the arms caches and so on. And then there was a time, it was when they took me, some people had hit the State House. So all those things, they wanted me to admit that I was involved. I knew about it, we planned it, and I was also there. Something that I didn't know. I was not there. Arms caches, I was not there. So I didn't know, but they wanted me to agree to it, and I continually refused. Despite them hitting me, they had cuffed us and put leg irons and so on. So as we moved around, it was difficult. It was painful, actually. Yeah, and then they were saying, from here, you are going to be killed. And then nobody will know anything about you. So even if you refuse to tell us the truth, because they were saying I was not telling them the truth when I was actually telling the truth. They said, if you don't tell us the truth, we're just going to kill you and they bury you somewhere.
So do you still remember some of the names of the people who were torturing you?
Those guys were changing. Although sometimes there was a guy who called, my names are called, they couldn't mention them because they didn't tell me their names. They didn't even want me to know them. And they could change from time to time. Very few, I think there was only one who could speak in Ndebele. Otherwise the others were speaking in Shona and so on. So it was really difficult. We had a hard time. They kept on changing us from one. I think they thought maybe our parents or the other guys from ZPRA will find out where we were. So they kept on changing us from one police camp to another and so on.
So you stay in, you don't go to court?
What happened is, when they were, I think it was for a month, they were moving me from one police camp to another. We never went to court. Until when they sent us to Chikurupi. When they sent us to Chikurupi, that's when I found out a lot of these guys. That's when I met Banatavengwa and so on, and all the commanders and many other ZPRA cadres that were locked in there. It was, that place, even up to now, the walls were so high that you could not see sunrise, and you could not see the sunset. There was a time when I really longed to see sunset or a sunrise, but you couldn't see it because the walls were so high. We only saw a sun somewhere when it was already up, maybe 10 o'clock or so, and then 3 or 4, then you couldn't see the sun anymore. But fortunately, we had other guys, so we just talked, and they actually closed up even starting. During the Smith regime, detainees were actually allowed to start and so on, but that was closed to us. So if you wanted to study, you had to do your own, go and pay, get your own money to pay and so on. And since I was in the army, they also stopped our pay. And they said they stopped the pay because from a date of arrest, no more payment. So we never got any payment or anything. And I was at Chikurupi for almost 3 years because we were caught in 1982. I think it was June somewhere there, 82. And we were released in 84, somewhere there, maybe September or so, 84. All these years, we're just sitting there. We never sent to court. But what they did, they would just come, somebody would come, the magistrate would come and just remand us to another date and so on. They continued doing that. We really never sent to court because there was nothing that they could prove in court, or there was no reason to send us to court. They knew the cases would fail. But at least Dabengwa and the top commandment, at least they were sent to court, which is better. But still they came out clean. They never did anything wrong, so they were discharged. Whereas in our case, we never even appeared in court. So all
your
those
family,
years,
were you married by then?
not yet. I was just about to marry a little child.
Then how does the child survive when you're not getting a salary?
They never cared about that. Actually, they used to call us dissidents. Even the warders there, they used to call us dissidents. We were regarded as dissidents at that time. Actually, almost all the Ndebele people were regarded as dissidents. That whatever you said, we just called dissidents, and they never cared what happened to our families and so on. Actually, it was as if eventually we were going to be killed. Yeah, and that's how we felt. We never even bothered our parents even when we came out, because we knew they were threatened. They couldn't come from Bulawayo or from Matebele to come to Harare, otherwise on the way they would get killed as well during that time, during the Kukraun time. That was the time. So it was not safe for Ndebele people to travel to Harare.
So you are finally released. Tell us about the day.
Yeah, and then finally we're released. And again, we didn't think it was true. We thought they would follow us up. And then what they did, then I was told I have to go to the army headquarters, to surrender whatever I have from the army, uniforms, what have you, all those things. So we surrendered to them. And then we were told we were discharged for immediate of arrest. So even if we never went to court, I never went to court for the charges that they laid against me.
You never went to court?
Yeah.
The army system never tried you? You were never charged of anything?
No, I was not tried.
But you were still dismissed?
I still was dismissed.
And you never challenged that in court?
We did try, but what they only did is to say, okay, instead of it discharged from a date of arrest, we're going to discharge you from a date of a release. And then they gave us a bit of money, and that's what caused us to leave, to get the houses or anything. That's all they did.
So when you were arrested, you were a lieutenant colonel?
Yes, I was a lieutenant colonel when I was arrested, and I was discharged still a lieutenant colonel.
So by now you would have been one of the army generals?
Yes, actually people that were under me, some of them, especially from the Zambia side, they are already generals now. A few from our side who went as far as being a general, but otherwise most of them. ZPRA, what was happening in National Army, you would have somebody under you as a Zanda, and he would be promoted, leaving you there because you happen to belong to ZPRA. ZPRA, they were overlooked, they were not promoted. And that's what caused a lot of discouragement in the army. They were not promoted. It was only the Zanda that were promoted.
Did you get your pension?
No, nothing. No pension, nothing.
But it
because they told us that you are undesirable elements. That's what they were writing. You are undesirable elements, don't want to hear anything about you.
So
like enough, when I left, as I told you, I was a teacher. So when I left the army, I just went back to teaching.
And you picked up your teaching position?
Yeah.
So there were never challenges when you were in the army and all this kind?
Their records were in poor condition. They didn't even realize that I was once in the army and what have you. The records were poor, so they accepted me in teaching again.
So then now other people are getting the 50,000 veterans and all that. Do you go to get that money?
Yes, I actually went until we went there to be vetted. They actually had to go through a process to be vetted and so on. Yes, and they vetted us, and then they gave us that money as well. That's all that we got, and I bought my house from that.
So, like, I mean, these days, if you had seen leading to the July 31 demonstrations, people were beaten up, accused of, trying to overthrow the government, and at one point you are accused of overthrowing the government. So, when you see those things, do you see any similarities?
Yes, it's just similar. That's what they always do. They always tell lies. Before, I never knew that somebody would be arrested for nothing until it happened to me. That's when I realized, actually somebody can be killed for nothing. Because I had not done anything. I had never went to a meeting or anything. But actually, the commander once mentioned it because of what had happened at Conmara, that is Nongo. He said, yeah, I'll have to pay for it. That's what he had said. So I was not surprised when I was arrested. But what is happening now is exactly what was happening during our time. People disappearing and so on. It's still happening even up to now.
So you work at KG6 when Nongo is always there. And did you have interactions with him?
Not much. Not much. I had mainly interactions with the other commanders, especially from our side that were there. It was easy to talk to them and so on. But the Nongo, it was only once in a while when he was giving orders or he wanted us to do something. That was all.
You are a lieutenant in the army. You are arrested. So the commanders come to understand what had happened. Like Nongo, did he talk to you and say, but comrade,
No,
why are you?
he never talked to me because actually they loved that to get the ZPRAs arrested because they feared the ZPRAs. They thought would overrun the government, would take over the government. They feared us so much that they even feared their own shadows. When we're not going to do anything, they just feared us. So they are really happy that we were arrested, and they never visited us in Chukurupi, not even one, except the people from our side. Of course, people from home, it was difficult, but at least a few, one or two people came to visit us at Chukurupi because they feared that we were distanced and they thought we were going to be killed. We've got even newspapers to show that even, we're not good people, we're supposed to be killed.
So at one point you just said, made the mind that you're going to be killed.
Yeah,
and they made peace with that.
At least even if we get killed, we knew we had done nothing wrong and that we had fought for this country so that the people of Zimbabwe can enjoy freedom. Even if they killed me, because I had already signed a death warrant when I went out to go and fight. I was prepared to die for my country.
I think we have learned a lot from this interview, but what I've always told many people and what I always tweet about is that if you want to understand the current government, if you want to understand ZANU-PF, go back to history and look at how they treated ZAPU. Some of the things that we have heard today from Memory Of Hlabangana is what exactly is happening now, where someone will be arrested and they'll be sent to jail or kept in prison without any charge. And also, this government is easy to accuse you. They are very quick to accuse you of being a dissident, trying to overthrow the government, being used by the West, and all those kind of names. So while it's now 40 years after independence, the tactics and the strategy that ZANU-PF have used have never changed. If they think that you are a threat to them, they will go out of their way to make sure that they deal with you, if not eliminate you. So we should not just take these things or these interviews as a lesson in history, but we need to understand how this system operates and how they will operate in future when their power is threatened. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Till we meet again in other programs tomorrow, have a good day.